So today we're going to meet at the Tustin Area Museum, and we're going to meet with Merilie Robertson. She's the granddaughter of C.E. It's going to be interesting to find out what she has to say about her life growing up with him as her grandfather. He was a pioneer here in Tustin.
Our next oral history is about C.E. Ed Utt. But before we begin, I thought you might like to be interested in hearing a little bit about him. He was a true pioneer and one of the leading agriculturalists and developers in the Tustin area. C.E. Utt came to town in 1874 with his family when he was only 8 years old, and the area, known as Tustin, was about 3 years ongoing. He worked in his father's store, which was called L. Utt Pioneer Store. Later, after his father passed away, he went into the agricultural business. And at about the same time, he bought the floundering Tustin Waterworks from the Willard brothers and eventually turned it into a successful operation called Tustin Waterworks. And that was active all the way up until the city of Tustin purchased it in 1982. Mr. Utt was a great believer in education. He served on the Tustin Grammar School District Board and played a prominent role in the organization of Tustin Union High School District. C.E. Utt Middle School is named after him, and it was built in 1962. Mr. Utt was involved in the development of Lemon Heights and later made his home up there. A believer in prohibition, he founded the Utt Juice Company in 1918 to bottle grape juice from his own vineyards. He named this brand of grape juice Queen Isabella. He began his agricultural career with Sherman Stevens in 1906 and soon became known as one of Orange County's most progressive agriculturalists. The two leased 1,000 acres from the James Irvine Company and organized the San Joaquin Fruit Company. Eventually, that company used its experience gained on the Irvine Ranch to develop property in Ventura County. Utt formed the Utt Development Company in Oxnard and developed ranches in the Simi Valley and Point Mugu areas. C.E. Utt died in 1950. I'm Gretchen Whistler, and I'm president of Tustin Area Historical Society, and with me today is Merilie Robertson, and Merilie is the granddaughter of C.E. Utt, who was quite a pioneer here in Tustin in the early days. So what I'd like to know, Merilie, is your first recollection of your grandfather. Was he here when you first knew him, or where were you?
I have a collection of recollections, but probably the main thing I have to tell you is a grandchild's view of Grandpa.
Wonderful.
And one of the things, Grandpa used to, he had a ranch in Oxnard.
Yes.
And so he would come to Ventura County, and then he would stop off to see his daughters. One of them was Aunt Gertrude, and the other was my mother, Dorothy. And I'll just tell you what it was like when Grandpa came.
Okay.
I remember that he had a red pickup, and everybody was afraid about his driving. He would roar up into the yard in this red pickup and stop very suddenly and jump out of his pickup and come in and see his daughter. And I'll tell about one time when nobody was home except me, and I was sitting on the porch, and Grandpa came up and he strode up the steps of the porch and said, "Hello, little girl," and then went on into the house, and about 2 minutes later he came stalking out and said, "Confound it, no hot water," and roared off again in his pickup.
He left.
Yeah, he left. So when my mother came home, I told her about this, and she laughed. She said, Papa has never gotten over the time when there was always a tea kettle with hot water on the wood stove.
Oh my
You know, we had hot running water after all, you know, we were
About-
modern folks.
About what year was that? Do you
Well,
remember?
I would, you know, let's say that I was 10 years old.
Uh-huh.
So that would be 1938 maybe. I'm guessing
And you were living in Ventura?
in Simi Valley.
Simi
which
Valley,
was then
yes.
called Simi. Yeah.
Simi.
Mm-hmm.
And we call it Simi now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We called it Simi. But, and I also remember that, you know, we thought Grandpa was really a character, and he was. He really was interesting. So I can remember times that he would come, and my mother would say, "Now, Papa, just come and sleep in. We have a guest room. Come and sleep inside." But he never did that. He slept in his sleeping bag in the back of the pickup.
Oh my
And
goodness.
my mother couldn't get him to come in. He was just kind of in a hurry.
Oh my goodness.
But he loved his daughters, and they
Of course.
adored him.
Of course.
And he liked my father a lot too, and they had lots of good long visits.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, my father had worked for him. That's another story. Before he and my mother were married. So
I see.
yeah,
Okay.
that was another one of Grandpa's projects.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
But this is after he had left Tustin, you think?
No, he
he
was
lived in
living in
Tustin?
Tustin. He'd
Ah.
just go from Tustin to Oxnard. That's where his ranch was.
Okay. Okay. So he would drive up there in
Yeah.
the red pickup.
I don't know if there's anything in the archives about that project.
Well, I've got something here where he established the San Joaquin Fruit Company. Or he
That was
worked.
here, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
And they developed property, the company developed property in Ventura County. And Mr. Utt formed the Utt Development Company in Oxnard
Yes.
and
Yeah.
developed ranches in the Simi Valley and Port Magoo areas. And it was said that he had grown every major crop possible in Orange County with the exception of sugar beets.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's what we know.
Okay. You know, the Oxnard project, I wish I could tell you more details about it, but it was really interesting. This land was very fertile, but it was just soaked. It was alkaline, very alkaline, so you couldn't grow anything on it. But he had read somewhere about how you could drain an alkali flat by flooding it and putting in tile lines, and this alkaline water would go away. And it was wonderful soil.
So he was really into it, wasn't
Oh,
he?
yeah, he
And
was.
did he have a background in agriculture, or was he just someone who read up on things and kind of tried things out?
You know, he was born up near Auburn. I
Yes.
think you've got all that
Yes,
material.
up in the Sacramento area.
I don't know what all his father did, but I think they grew something.
Okay.
But I think he was just really interested. He was interested in everything.
Sounds like it to me. I read up on him.
Yeah.
He's quite something. I was very impressed with him.
I'll tell you a little bit more about my impressions. of it.
Sure.
But that was a really interesting experiment and quite successful. And that area was called the lima bean capital of the world.
Oh my.
It was lima beans that they grew.
Oh my.
And
So he was able to get crops growing there, even though
Oh,
it was
yeah.
alkaline, because he
Oh,
figured
yeah.
it out.
Uh-huh. So he was just going back and forth. Where should I go next? We came here to visit when he, you know, my mother was his daughter, and Mamie Sheldon Utt, who died, very at age 48, so I never knew her.
She was young.
The grandmother I knew was my step-grandmother, Grandma, who was Margaret Rawlings.
Rawlings,
Before.
yes.
But she and her daughter, who was an aunt to me, they would plan wonderful times for us to come down and visit at Lemon Heights. Do you want to hear all this?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You know, Lemon Heights was a magical place. For us, it
Tell
was
us,
so-
tell me about that, because I've heard it was just rolling hills up there.
It was.
Yeah.
And their house, it was a big house built around a patio. And Aunt Margie was a wonderful gardener, and so it was full of exotic flowers. And there's a fish pond out in the front with goldfish. And then there was a fish pond in the patio, too, with all these flowers. And then they had a special room that was for mothers and grandchildren. And I think it had a double bed and maybe a crib. And then there was a little room, we called it the sewing room later, but it was a nursery and it had a crib.
Oh.
So we could stay over there, make a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And I remember the first thing we did when we would get there was run through the patio and to that room, and then out in the backyard there were turtles.
Oh.
That was absolutely a wonderful experience to be able to
Yes.
see the turtles.
So you always were excited to come and visit.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And then when we got a little bit older, like say, later grades in high school, Grandma and Aunt Margie would always arrange for us to meet all the local cousins. And we would have outings
Oh, fun.
to go see them and do things with them. And we always had a sewing project. My mother, having 6 kids, didn't have a whole lot of time
Oh, my.
to teach us how to sew. So we would always go to Rankin's department store. Is it
Yes.
still in Santa Ana?
I don't think so, but I've heard of Rankins.
Yeah, we'd pick out material and
Yeah.
patterns, and then Aunt Margie especially would teach us
It
how
sounds
to
like you really
sew.
had wonderful times
Oh, yes.
at that house with your grandfather. and
Yeah.
Step grandmother.
Yeah, it was
your
great.
aunts.
And sometimes with our mothers when we were younger, but
Yeah.
later by ourselves.
Sure.
And I remember, one of the great things is there was a library, not a huge room, but enough for a lot of people to be in there. And it was full of cupboards with toys
Oh,
and
wow.
games.
So
and
they planned for you
They
to
did.
have fun in
they
there.
really did.
Yeah.
And then of course we'd get together with the cousins there, and then there were 2 upstairs kind of guest rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And we kids were forbidden to go up there, not by Grandma, but by our parents.
Oh.
So one of the games we would play is dare each other to go up. So we'd go up
Of
3
course.
steps and
Of course
4
you went
steps.
up there.
And then later when we were teenagers, we got to sleep up there, and that was exciting too.
Special.
Yeah, it was just there was a rolling lawn out in front, and we would roll down that, and
And probably not a lot of other property around.
there, was it, across the way was a house that belonged to the Rankins. I never saw them, I never visited them, but that was their house. And then they had a huge living room that we hardly ever went into, but it was a place where Grandma probably had her WCTU meetings, things like that.
Ah,
And,
WCTU.
But we would go in there sometimes and stand on our heads
Yeah.
and do things like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, it just, it was
Oh,
a great.
fun,
But
fun.
when we were there, it was mainly Grandma and Aunt Margie that entertained us, but Grandpa was there some of the time. And he would be sitting either in a old canvas chair or in a
I know
hammock.
exactly what kind of canvas chair
Yeah.
you mean, yes.
Yeah. And he was always sort of deep in thought.
Ah.
He was not a person to make small talk. I remember once Aunt Margie said, "Well, Dad, why don't you visit with us?" or said something like that. And he looked up and he said, "All right, what'll we talk about?" He was so humorous.
Yeah.
But he just read a lot, and he wrote
Mm-hmm.
up his experiences.
Yeah.
And
Well, that was special that he wrote about his experiences.
yes,
Because
there's one
that,
experience he didn't write about, and I'm very sorry, but I'll tell you about
oh,
that later.
please do.
Maybe he did, and I don't know it. But anyway, and he would sometimes hire us to pull weeds or
Yeah,
out of the lawn or whatever, and
Yeah.
pay us a little something.
sure.
And So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. There,
Would you spend your summers necessarily there?
no, maybe a week or two.
A week or two, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, you
Because
were
there were
close
other
in.
cousins too, who took turns
Yes.
coming there.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and getting there was always an experience because usually Grandpa would be coming through from Oxnard, and we kids would ride in the back of the pickup.
In the back of the truck.
Yes, and have a lot of fun in the
Sure.
back. It would be totally, was totally
Of course, it
lawless thing
It was
to
just
do.
roads, right? You didn't have any big, busy highways to get here.
Well,
Or did you?
yeah,
Did
I
you?
think so, yeah.
101 was a
Well,
pretty
that's
busy-
true.
Yeah,
That was-
it-
And that came right through Tustin, so.
I guess, yeah,
It
that's
did.
right, yeah.
Mhm.
So, now, some other things, I'm just thinking of Grandpa loved Baja California. I don't know if that comes out in any of
I don't know, but we'd love to hear that.
Well, there's one thing that you should have if you don't have it, and I have an extra copy here.
Oh, that's
It's
very
How
nice.
the Trout Climbed San Pedro Martir Mountain, Baja California. And he tells, it's just really interesting.
Did he have a home down there, or did
No.
he just go and visit there?
No, and I'm not sure when this started. Let's see, 1893. No. Well, I know that he did this when my brothers were like teenagers. He went. He knew there were trout, and he loved fishing. He loved trout fishing. He loved camping and hunting. He's a hunter. I saw how much of a hunter he was when I was reading the story about
Yeah.
getting to Tustin. But what he did is he rented some mules and had his couple grandsons with him, and he had these barrels that he filled with water, and he put trout in them, and then would take them up the mountain and plant the upper streams. I'm not sure what an ecologist would say about this nowadays, of moving a species from one place to another.
No, those were the good old days. You could
Those
do
are the good old days. So anyway, and so the grandsons, one of their jobs would be every night to change the water so that these little trout
Yeah.
wouldn't die. And then he would plant them in a place like La Grulla, was much further up. And, there were, La Sanca was another place where he planted. But it's detailed in here.
Oh, wow.
And my brother Alan and my cousin Jack were the first ones to do it. And then my brother Lee and
As they got
cousin Teddy.
older, they were able
And
to
Jimmy
do.
Deaver, I think, was the youngest one. He's about my age. And I always thought, it was only the boys that Grandpa took. That wasn't
Now,
fair.
how many children did Mr. Ott have?
He had 5,
5.
Aunt Gertrude, and one of the pictures I sent you has a picture of most of them. Aunt Gertrude was the oldest, and my mother, Dorothy, was the next, and then Uncle Jimmy was the next one. He was the only boy. And then Aunt Louise Deaver was the next, and then Aunt Elizabeth, who was Finley, very Finley. So, yeah, there were 5 of them.
And then all the cousins that you got to play with.
Oh,
their
yeah,
children, yeah.
yes.
So Jimmy was James Utt that became the assemblyman?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's right.
Yes.
And I think those pictures I sent you, probably most of them you already have, but there is one family picture that shows, maybe not Aunt Elizabeth isn't in quite a few of the pictures because she wasn't born yet. So, and then I should mention someone else, Aunt Hattie, came to live in the household before Aunt Elizabeth was born, because my grandmother was not well. She had epilepsy for many years
Oh.
and died when she was only 48. So Aunt Hattie had worked for Grandpa in, I don't know, the apricot pitting sheds or something. So he liked her, and he invited her to come and stay and help.
Help with the children.
So she became a sister and
Oh.
she was our Aunt Hattie forever.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
yeah, so that was great. And yeah, so that was that family.
Sometimes the best relatives are the ones that aren't truly blood relatives. But they're people that are part of your family.
Yeah, oh
True,
yeah,
true,
she
yeah.
definitely was, and wonderful.
So it
person.
sounds like the household from the time that your grandmother and he were first married and they
Mhm.
had the children was always a very busy household,
Oh yeah. It was
bustling household.
very
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah.
And, you know, things were so different. Like, my mother said that there was a woman, and I used to know what her name was, who would come and stay with them, I don't know, for a month, and do all their sewing, make everybody's clothes.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
And-
because otherwise you didn't have any
Yeah.
way of having it.
So that was really interesting. And then another interesting thing to me was their doctor, their family doctor was Dr. Boyd,
Uh-huh.
and I think he's probably in the archives around here. But he would just come by every once in a while and see how everybody was.
Oh, my.
They
Check
didn't go to
everyone
the
out?
doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure he made house calls, didn't he?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
right. He came around,
Yeah.
and what was his name anyway? So they were important people in the
Yes.
family, and I remember them just barely. So, oh, I was going to tell you more about Baja California. Well,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
one thing, but I'm not sure if I think he must have had this interest in Mexico and Baja California before he met my father. My father lived in Mexico, was born there, and went to a one-room schoolhouse. And after 8th grade, he came up to go to high school in Santa Ana. And at that time, there was no high school in Tustin.
Right.
So my mother and her brothers and sisters went to Santa Ana High School, and that's where they met.
Oh.
And my father's half-brother was R.C. Shellhouse, who
Oh,
of
yes.
the
I've got his name right here.
yeah, uh-huh.
Yes. Where do I see this? Yes. Partnering in the Queen Isabella
Yes,
juice, the
that's right.
Juice company.
Yes.
Yes.
And by the way, that's A-R-C, maybe I-E, it's not C-A, it's not Archie, it's
Oh,
R-C.
R.C..
Just for the record.
That's good
Yeah,
to know. Well,
okay.
whoever wrote this up spelled it that way.
Yeah,
not,
sure.
Not I,
It's
but that's
okay.
good to know.
But, so my mother says that the juice factory started in their kitchen. I don't know how it was, but there were grapes growing somewhere, and Grandpa wanted to, he was a thrifty man, you know.
Uh-huh.
So they started making grape juice in the kitchen.
Uh-huh.
And then it,
Yeah, it says he bottled the grape juice on his back porch. Is that
oh,
correct?
probably, yeah. Oh, I should read that.
Well, yeah, there it
Yeah.
is, right there.
Okay.
That's what we have in our archives, that information, and you can tell me whether that's true.
I would love to have a copy of it because
I will get you one. I will make one today.
because my Uncle R.C.'s daughter is also still living. She and I are the same
Really?
age.
Oh.
And she lives in Chico. But she used to
Perfect.
live in Tustin.
I'll make two
for years.
copies. One for
Yeah.
you and one for her. How's that?
Well, I don't want to waste your time here, but yeah. So, but because I never quite figured out how it was, because it was Uncle R.C. that really developed the juice. You know, Grandpa started it, but
Okay.
it was yeah.
It says something about it being a partner in establishing the Queen
Mm.
Isabella brand of juice, jams,
Yes.
and jellies.
Yeah, yeah. And it was so fun to go and visit the fruit. He had a little laboratory, but I guess they tested things and
Mhm.
would show us little experiments that were quite exciting.
He was really,
This was Uncle R.C.
yes, but still, the fact that your grandfather got into that business as well,
Yeah.
that really impresses me, because he was growing crops, and I read somewhere where he was a teetotaler. He
Oh,
did
yes. He was a member of the Prohibition
Yes,
Party.
he was very much in
Yes.
Prohibition.
Right.
And so he had the answer to the vineyards.
yeah.
He
Okay.
said, no, it will be grape juice. And they will love it. And they did, didn't they? And the
Mhm.
jellies and jams. That was
Yes.
wonderful.
And they were good. Oh, they were good.
Well, yes, they were good.
You know-
I heard they were delicious, and that Knott's Berry Farm was very interested
Yes.
in that.
They did. They put
They-
their label on. but-
Yeah.
And here's an interesting thing. my father on our ranch in C.E. Grew grapes for the factory. And my two brothers would take turns trucking these grapes here to Tustin.
Really?
Yeah.
From there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We grew California Concords and a variety called Lenore,
Uh-huh.
which had a very deep color and gave color to the juice.
Mhm.
And they would, and I could earn money picking grapes on
Oh
our
my
ranch. And
goodness.
during the war, they closed down school for a couple weeks so
That everybody
that we
could
could all help with harvest.
harvest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can
That's
remember
huge.
picking those grapes.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, so anyway, we would, when we came, I think I told you we would come, Grandpa would bring us down, usually in the pickup,
Mhm.
and we would have a good time. But anyway, back to Baja California,
Yes.
I probably could figure it out, but I know that when I was in college and my dad was getting interested in developing some land in Baja California, we were down there, we were camping in this, it was really hot in this low tent. And Grandpa came along, you know, we weren't really expecting, I wasn't expecting him. But he went all over the place. And if his car broke down, this is before he had a driver, who I noticed was in some of these papers. What was his name? Anyway, he's given some talks here. Okay, anyway, if his car broke down, he didn't worry. He would just get out that folding chair and sit in it until somebody came along that could help him.
Oh my.
I don't think he worried about anything.
Well, that's,
I think he just, you know,
he figured everything would work out somehow.
maybe people who have been raised in a situation where it was just, you just barely raised enough to feed your family and, you know,
And he talked about that too, not necessarily his personal experience, but he talked about the farming here in Tustin and how it was difficult in the beginning. And he said if you wanted water, you had to go pump the water. If you wanted
yes.
heat, you had to go chop your own wood. It was just, nothing was provided. They
Yeah.
had to make everything
Yes.
happen.
Yeah. I was very interested to read that same thing that either last night or this morning, to see how early on, I knew he didn't like running the store, his father's store, which he inherited. I knew he didn't like that. That was not his forte. But how early on he would buy a little piece of land and grow something, and he was a real entrepreneur.
And he knew what he wanted.
Yeah.
I think, and he, you know, if you follow your dream and do what you love, that's the secret.
Yeah.
And he obviously wanted to do those things.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's something, a really nice memory I have of Grandpa. Not that I remember it, but when my mother and Aunt Gertrude were maybe like juniors or seniors in
Mhm.
high school,
Mm-hmm.
Grandpa was so busy he didn't have time to go off on a trip. But he arranged for them to go with the Sierra Club on these 6-week hikes
Oh,
in
my.
the Sierras.
Oh,
And I've got
lovely.
a picture of my mother, you know, with her walking stick and a dress, wearing a dress.
Oh,
And
my.
so that for 2 different summers,
Oh, that's
wasn't
great.
that a
Wonderful
great thing to
experience.
give to your
Yes.
kids?
Yes.
Great.
And I think there was a teacher, maybe her name was Clara, somebody, who he sent along with them. So they would have chaperones.
Yes, yes.
Or just, you know, an adult.
True.
So I thought that was a really nice thing.
Oh, yeah.
He did nice things for his
Yes.
children.
Yes.
And, you know, he wasn't like the kind of grandfather that you cuddle up to much. Although a picture that I really want to send to you is one taken on, when my parents moved up, when my parents got married, they went to Mexico and they had their first 3 kids there. And then they were thinking about coming up, partly because for this kids' education and so on. So Grandpa was out scouting and looking for land, a ranch that they could get. and that's how they ended up in Simi Valley.
Oh.
But we have this great picture of Grandpa sitting on the porch of that old wooden house with my older brothers and sisters. I wasn't born yet. And he's cuddling, I think it's Jean, I can't remember, but it's just such a dear picture of him with his
Sweet,
grandchildren.
Sweet, yes.
Yeah.
So you were there, and you always lived there, and he would travel from here.
Mm-hmm.
But did he eventually move there, or did he always live here?
He lived. He died when I was in college, and I didn't go to his funeral. I was up in, I might have been in Berkeley by that time. I'm not sure, but my mother wrote about his funeral. But it was here.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to establish that. I didn't know because he had all the interests in Ventura County.
No,
whether
he never lived
traveled
there.
from
No.
here all
No,
the time.
he was here,
Yeah.
and let's see, he died before Grandma. Yeah.
1951, it said.
Yeah, they were still living in Lemon Heights.
Yeah.
A few years after that, then Grandma moved down here into Tustin
Okay.
on B Street.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
all right. And then your uncle was the he was in the state assembly, state congressman?
I know he was in Washington.
Yeah.
But was he in the state?
Well, I don't
First?
know.
He was an assemblyman, I think.
Written
Was he?
here,
Okay.
It's
Yeah, 'cause
written
I
here.
was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here in
Sure.
It says here,
Mhm.
again, I don't know. State Assembly 1931 to 1952, and then in 1951, well, it must have been, couldn't have been at the same time, he was representative in Congress from 1951 until 1970 when he passed away.
Okay.
He
I know it
died
was
in
about
office.
That's what I
17 years.
recall.
Yes.
When he was-
Yeah, and I'm just reading what
Yeah.
I've been given. So,
That sounds right.
yeah.
I don't remember the dates.
My dad knew.
Yeah. Well, Uncle Jimmy was a lot of fun. He was a serious person, but with his nieces and nephews, it was always fun to have
Yeah.
him come and visit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful, wonderful growing up time when you
It
got to
was.
come
It was.
and be with your cousins here
Yeah.
and be with your grandfather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a good time. And then, of course, the Shell Houses, R.C. Shell House, and he had 2 kids, and we would go and visit them too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I'm still in touch with Pat.
Yes.
She's a really nice person. I wish you could interview her. Anyway, but I did want to tell you about something, and boy, if you ever found anything about this, I can't imagine that Grandpa wouldn't have written about it. He and my father's father,
Mhm.
whom he called Don Louis, and my grandfather that we called Dad, called him Mr. Utt. They were good friends. They were totally different kinds of people. My grandfather sailed the 7 seas and ended up in Mexico, and he was a Dane. And Grandpa was a farmer and pretty much of a landlubber, though he liked to go fishing and do things like that. They cooked up this scheme to my grandfather built a boat. He was always building boats. If he saw a pile of lumber around the ranch, he would say, "Connie, I think I'll build another boat."
Ah.
Anyway, but he built this boat, and they took it to the Colorado River, and my cousin Jimmy Deaver thinks they put in at Lee's Ferry, but I don't know
Oh,
if that's
my.
right. And they sailed all the way down, didn't sail, they didn't need to
Right.
sail,
But went in the boat.
in the boat, to the Grand Canyon.
Oh,
And
my goodness.
it was dangerous.
Yes, yes.
It was really dangerous.
Yes,
Even
they have rapids there.
Yeah, my paternal grandfather was a sailor and fearless. My dad said, he scared him sometimes even because he just wasn't afraid. But even he said he would never do it again.
Yeah, I think the rubber rafts are better for the
Yeah, maybe
rapids
so.
than a boat.
Yeah, but some,
Home-built wooden boat.
yeah, home built.
Yeah, home
wooden
built is
boat.
the key.
plus, Grandpa was not really a very good sailor. He loved adventure, but once he got caught in quicksand, and my grandfather had to rescue him, and sometimes they couldn't beach anywhere. They just have to tie up along the cliffs. And so I'm just sorry it isn't written up, because I think it happened either when I was very young or before I was born, when they were younger. And I just heard about it. And Jimmy Deaver, who was close to Grandpa because he drove him on trips.
This is Grandpa Ut or your
This is
other granddad?
Grandpa Ut,
Okay,
yeah. Yeah, but eventually it got so that he had to have a driver. Well, his eyes were not good. So I'm just sorry we don't have more of a record.
Yeah.
But I do know they ended up and abandoned the boat somewhere near the Gulf.
Oh my
And,
goodness. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
it was a real adventure.
Yeah. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I can just picture the two of them in the boat.
Yeah. I was hoping maybe there'd be something.
I've
in the
never heard of
archives.
this.
Yeah, but I did
But
want
I
you to
certainly
know
will
that.
see if we can find something.
Yeah.
And if we do, we'll certainly share that with you.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah,
That was a real adventure.
yeah. And you brought some other things I see in
Well,
other folders,
uh,
but maybe
Yeah,
not.
this is how the trout climbed San Pedro Norte. These are just things I have about Tustin, but they don't particularly, I mean, friends and so, Earl Rowanhorse.
Yes, Earl Rowan.
Is he still living?
No, he passed away a couple of years ago.
I remember him very well when he was like a high school student,
Oh my.
and I was a little kid, and he
Uh-huh.
was driving Grandpa around. So it's nice to
Oh.
see that he got involved in all of this historical
He
stuff.
was very involved in the city of Tustin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And story of Tustin. Well, these are things, you know, I know you have this historical sketch of the Tustin district.
I'm sure we do,
This-
but we'll double check on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
This is
I haven't
wonderful
read it
that you have
recently.
all of this.
You know, I have a really good friend who lives in Tustin, and that's how we got, oh, you know Vicky. Did you know?
Just from emails. I've
Oh,
never
okay,
met her.
all right. Well, you know, she's from Syria, her family background, and I'm very interested in the Middle East. So I said, oh, my ancestors are from Tustin.
Yeah.
And so I sent her a copy of this.
I just want to read this. He wrote this, right?
Yes,
It's-
but it was a chapter in a
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
A larger book.
And the first sentence, Tustin is located in a forest somewhere between the Gospel Swamp and Tomato Springs. If this description means little or nothing to you, ask some old timer for directions.
Gospel Swamp was Costa Mesa.
And
Oh, was it?
And where was Tomato Springs?
Sure.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And Anaheim, I found Anaheim was really the only city
yes.
in this.
But
Yeah.
Tustin is located in a forest.
There were
That's
sycamore
interesting.
trees,
Yes, everywhere, but
not in-
You know, we
You'll
have,
know.
I have this thing about forests, I think of pine trees and all
Yes,
of that. But I
maybe-
lived in Pakistan, and the teachers in our school, we went on a field trip to a forest. Well, it didn't look like what I thought was a forest.
Ah,
It was, I
just
don't know, poplar
trees.
trees,
Yeah.
and I can't
Well, I
remember.
think that's more what he meant, but I just
Yeah.
love that first line. It just
Yeah.
grabs me.
Yeah,
Yes.
I read this a couple months ago and sent it to Vicki.
Yeah, I
Um,
know we have this.
But there's something else here that my Aunt Gertrude wrote up. And if you don't have
Here's a
it,
folder, I don't know if you,
Uh,
this is what you're looking for.
um, oh gosh, there's another thing. Well, no, it's about his father, really.
That's okay, we want to hear that too.
Well,
Lysander?
Yes, Lysander. With these dates, I was so happy to see these, that in 1848 he went to California with an ox team. In 1849 he went to Mariposa County,
Uh-huh. I know where
and
that
in
is.
1851 he went to Auburn,
Yes.
and 1874 went to Tustin. And he guided immigrants to California over the Butterfield Trail, hauled freight over the Sierra Nevada
Oh, my.
for the railroad, and crossed Santa Fe before Mexico annexation.
My goodness.
Yeah, and now in this piece by my Aunt Gertrude, where she put together, she put together some of his writings and then put some of her own comments in here.
Oh, well, I know we don't have that.
You don't? Okay. Well,
I'm sure we don't
I
have
only
that.
have one copy, but if you
We,
want to
we will
copy
make
it-
a copy
Yeah,
today.
okay. It's fascinating.
Hmm.
I found it just
I'm
so...
sure it is.
Yeah, some of it Aunt Gertrude wrote and some Grandpa wrote. And you can tell how the affection that she had for her father. Anyway, but he went to, at one stage, I have to put this all together in my mind. In Mariposa County, he joined with others and they did pretty well in gold mining.
Mm-hmm.
And then it all got washed out in a big flood. And that's when he started doing this other, But, we're very interested in the story of Nate Harrison. Or is that familiar to you? Okay, then I won't.
That's okay, but
Well,
was he from, he lived here?
Well, no, he came from back east and he came with Lysander.
I see.
He was African American.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And then he settled on some near Escondido somewhere.
Oh,
It's a whole interesting story.
Oh, wow.
My nephew Mike, who's really interested in history, he said he was at some lecture and so they were talking about Nate Harrison. And they said, and he traveled to this area with Lysander Utt. Mike said,
Yes.
he keeled over to hear that.
Yes.
So ever
Yes.
since then, we've wanted to
So
know
they
more about.
so they traveled initially when they came
Yes,
here.
but we don't know where they connected up.
Oh,
And we're just trying to research. But that's an interesting thing about Lysander.
yeah. yeah.
So,
Well, I am not surprised because from what you've described your grandfather, he got it from somewhere, and obviously he got it from his father.
oh yeah, yeah, they were
Yeah.
pioneers.
Yes.
But it tells about how Lysander met Grandpa's mother.
Oh.
She was working as a waitress in the Grizzly Bear house, and they had come around the horn.
Yes. Yes.
That was before
before the Panama Canal.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway,
Oh. Wow.
it's just really,
That's really
really
a great story in
interesting.
itself.
Yeah.
I know we don't have this.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad I have
I
something
am too.
that's.
Now we can make copies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one. The other one.
Copy. And yeah,
I
I
have.
understand this one, and we may have this one. I don't know, but I know we
I'm-
can make
yeah,
copies.
we probably
Before you
have that,
leave today, we'll have that
Yeah.
back for you.
I don't know.
Copy machines are wonderful.
This is a poem that my Aunt Gertrude wrote about Grandpa. And shall I read it or no? I
Sure.
mean,
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Oh, there never was a man since creation first began that could even hold a candle to my daddy. I have known him quite a spell, and I've heard the old folks tell that he used to be a lively, teasing laddie. He is grown up now, and we children love him so, for he never will be old in heart and spirit. And there's nothing he can do if there's pain and grief. There's nothing he can't do if there's pain and grief. He's not the one to fear it. He's a crank, some people say, and comical in a way, for he never cares a hang what folks are thinking. Prohibition is his vote, and he wears a bygone coat, and he hates the style above all else but drinking. Dad's an independent soul. Praise of men is not his goal, and it matters not to him how people jest. He's a friend to all that's good. Hundreds love him as you would, and those who know him longest love him best. How he loves to see things grow, loves to plow and reap and sow. He's a farmer through and through, my daddy dear. But an interesting thing, be it book or bug or king, keeps his mind and memory running in high gear. Oh, if I could only be half as great and kind as he, I could help to make this world a finer place. He's been faithful from his youth to the God of right and truth, and he's done his part to better all the race.
Oh,
By Gertrude Hess.
that's lovely.
Isn't that
That
nice?
is lovely.
Yeah, I'd never seen it before. I just found it in my file.
Oh, that is lovely.
Yeah.
And I hope he read it too.
Oh, I'm sure
Oh,
she
yeah.
probably did it for his birthday or
Yes,
something.
yes.
Yeah,
That's a lovely tribute.
yeah.
Lovely tribute. Oh, you have a lot of special things on your grandfather. And we are so fortunate that you are here and sharing this with us. It means a lot to us. It really does.
Well, you know, I'm interested in history, and so
Not
I'm really
everybody
happy
is,
to
so-
be able to do this.
Oh, we thank you.
And
We really do.
and my family, they want to see this, whatever you've done today, because
Oh,
We're all interested
absolutely.
in-
I think a copy for sure.
I'll put it on DVDs and then
Okay.
I'll mail it to you or.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I hope we have your address here.
And if I think of something that I've forgotten, I'll write to you, I'll email it to you. I'm sure I've forgotten some things.
We all do that.
Yeah.
No, we do, but this has been wonderful. We just appreciate you sharing and spending your time and coming down here. I know you're doing other things. Well, we can put it on the floor.
No, I mean, you're really gonna take pictures.
We're going to practice, believe me. I'm right up there with you, Merilie.
Mhm.
I've done this once
Okay.
before. We're going to relax.
Okay.
We're going to have the camera's going to be on, but it's not necessarily going to be official. We're gonna
Okay,
relax.
all right.
We're going to get real. Merilie, it's Merilie.
L-I-E.
That's
Uh-huh.
so pretty. Is that a nickname or?
No, it's, my parents made it
beautiful.
up.
I love
And
it.
I've never met another one, except I've got two that are named after me. So we're an exclusive club of
That's
three.
beautiful. Before we get started, just kind of to break the ice a little bit.
Yeah.
I went online last night and read an awful lot. It's your grandfather, right?
Yeah.
C.E.
Mhm.
I read stuff about Mr. C.E. that I didn't know before. He talked about when he first came here, when he
Yeah.
was 8 years old.
Oh, good. I just read that.
And
Was
I
it last
thought
night or this
that was,
morning?
and he
myself?
said, as a young lad of 8 summers, that's how
I
he
know.
spoke. It was his 1932. And he talked about he had been to Sacramento, he'd been to Los Angeles, and he'd been to Anaheim, and they were on their way to his uncle's
Charlie Platt.
Platt's house. And he didn't realize that they went right to Tustin
Went past it
because
up.
there was one grocery store, one bank, and a couple of lean-tos, and that was it.
I know, it's
1874. And he
And
said,
no
"This is
orange
in the city."
trees.
No, no.
What a disappointment that was.
And little did he know, I guess, that he would be here
Yeah,
doing everything he did.
yeah,
It was quite something.
yeah.
It really was.